It's hard to pinpoint the exact moment I fell in love with Emma. Maybe it was the way her laughter lit up the room, or perhaps it was the quiet confidence she carried with her everywhere she went. We met almost by accident, at a mutual friend's gallery opening in New York. I had just moved to the city for work, still finding my footing, and a mutual friend insisted I come along to the event. I wasn't expecting much. I never was a fan of those pretentious art circles, but Emma was different. She wasn't just another face in the crowd. I remember seeing her across the room, standing by a large, abstract painting that I couldn't make heads or tails of. She looked effortlessly stunning, with her dark hair falling in loose waves over her shoulders, wearing a simple black dress that accentuated her slender figure without drawing too much attention. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, and that's what caught my eye. She had this natural elegance, the kind that didn't need to scream for attention because it commanded it without effort. I think I spent half the evening stealing glances at her, hoping she wouldn't notice how awkward I felt trying to figure out an excuse to talk to her. As it turned out, she noticed me long before I even mustered the courage to approach. It was Emma who struck up the conversation, her easygoing charm putting me at ease almost instantly. We talked about everything and nothing, the art we pretended to understand, the latest indie bands she was obsessed with, and our mutual disdain for the overpriced wine they were serving at the gallery. She had this way of making even the most mundane conversation feel meaningful. Time seemed to stretch that night. Hours felt like minutes as we got lost in our little world. From that evening on, things moved fast between us. It was like we had found a missing piece in each other's lives. I'd always been the ambitious, career-driven type, living for deadlines and corporate success. Emma, on the other hand, was a free spirit. She had an innate sense of adventure, the kind of person who would spontaneously book a trip to a random city just to see a concert or explore a new coffee shop she'd heard about. And yet, despite our differences, we balanced each other out perfectly. She softened my edges, and I grounded her. Within a year, we decided to move to Los Angeles. I had landed a promotion, and Emma, always up for a new adventure, saw it as a chance for a fresh start. LA suited her in ways New York never could. The sunshine, the open spaces, the creative energy, she thrived in it. It wasn't long before we became part of the city's social scene, attending gallery openings, rooftop parties, and industry events. Everywhere we went, people seemed to gravitate toward us. We were that couple, the one everyone admired. Beautiful, successful, always together, always in sync. We didn't just attend events, we were often the life of the party. Looking back, I can see how we fell into that lifestyle so easily. It was intoxicating, the glamour, the attention. We were both young and hungry for experiences. Emma was especially drawn to the creative circles we moved in. She had always been passionate about music, art, and culture, and LA was the perfect playground for her to explore that side of herself. She met musicians, filmmakers, and artists, and I loved watching her come alive in those environments. It felt like we were living the dream, our dream. We'd go to a party one night, then spend the next day driving along the coast with the top down, listening to music and laughing until our stomachs hurt. Those were the moments I treasured the most, the in-between times, when it was just the two of us. No lights, no crowds, just us. I remember thinking, this is it. This is the life I've always wanted, and Emma was at the center of it. For a long time, it felt like nothing could touch us. We were invincible, or at least that's how it seemed. Emma and I would walk into a room, and heads would turn. People loved being around us, and we loved being together. It was easy to believe that things would always be like that, perfect, untouchable. I never imagined anything could come between us because why would it? We had it all. We were each other's world. But life, as I would later learn, has a funny way of changing things when you least expect it. Those carefree days, the endless parties, the quiet drives up the coast, they weren't the whole story. Cracks were forming beneath the surface, but I was too blinded by the shine of it all to notice. At least, not at first. Back then, though, I wasn't thinking about any of that. I was in love, truly, deeply, and wholeheartedly. Emma was my person, my partner, and I couldn't have imagined my life without her. We were just getting started, or so I thought. As the months rolled on in our glamorous Los Angeles life, the vibrant energy that had once defined our relationship began to shift. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly, like the first hints of a storm brewing on the horizon. Emma had always been passionate about her interests, but I noticed a marked change in her behavior. She began spending more time at studios, immersed in what she referred to as rehearsals. At first, I supported her wholeheartedly, thrilled to see her pursuing her dreams with such vigor. However, as the days turned into weeks, a gnawing unease took root in the pit of my stomach. The late nights became more frequent. Emma would tell me she was working on new music or collaborating with friends in the industry. I found myself alone more often than not, scrolling through my phone, waiting for her to come home. Each time she walked through the door, there was a new layer of distance in her eyes, a flicker of something I couldn't quite place. It was as if I was catching glimpses of a stranger who had taken up residence in my wife's body. The vibrant spark that once danced in her gaze seemed dulled, replaced by an unsettling reticence. I tried to dismiss my concerns at first. Maybe she was just overwhelmed by her creative pursuits, I reasoned. After all, the world of music is notorious for its unpredictability and pressures. I would remind myself that this was a phase, a challenging period she needed to navigate to find her voice. Her passion. But the rationalizations did little to quell the growing storm of doubt brewing in my mind. The first significant sign of trouble emerged one evening when I had planned a cozy dinner for us. I wanted to surprise Emma with her favorite dish, a homemade pasta that we often enjoyed together, reminiscing about our early days. I spent hours in the kitchen, excited to see her face light up when she walked in. But as the clock ticked by, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. When she finally arrived, almost 2 hours late, I felt a rush of conflicting emotions, relief, confusion, and frustration all at once. Emma breezed in, her hair slightly disheveled, her eyes bright yet distant. "Sorry, babe, I lost track of time at the studio," she said, her voice a mix of excitement and exhaustion. I wanted to embrace her, but instead, I was met with the coldness of her preoccupation. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to mask the worry in my tone. She waved her hand dismissively, a familiar gesture I had come to recognize as her way of deflecting questions she didn't want to answer. "Yeah, just working on a new song. It's coming together nicely. I'll tell you all about it later." I could tell she was preoccupied, her mind lingering on something beyond our dinner table. I forced a smile, determined not to let my concerns ruin the evening, but the conversation felt hollow. Instead of sharing our thoughts, we sat in silence, the clinking of forks the only sound breaking the stillness. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing moment, my feelings of unease festered. I began to notice small changes in Emma's demeanor. She was less interested in our shared activities. The spontaneous beach trips we used to take became rare. Even our late-night conversations, filled with laughter and dreams, dwindled to brief exchanges about mundane topics. I tried to engage her in deeper conversations about her music, hoping it might spark a connection. But more often than not, she would brush me off, her mind elsewhere. Her phone became an omnipresent entity. I would catch her glancing at it frequently, her expression shifting to something secretive whenever a notification chimed. There was an undeniable tension in the air, an invisible wall that seemed to grow taller each day. I wanted to ask her about it, to demand transparency, but I hesitated. What if I was just being paranoid? What if this was all in my head? I feared that bringing up my concerns would push her further away. One evening, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I casually asked Emma about her latest rehearsals, trying to sound nonchalant. She hesitated, a shadow passing over her face. "Just some new material. You know how it is. Lots of late nights with the band," she replied, but her tone lacked the enthusiasm I had hoped for. Instead of the spark of passion I had come to expect from her, there was only a vague sense of detachment. "Are you sure everything's okay? You seem different lately," I ventured, trying to navigate the conversation delicately. Emma's expression hardened for a moment, and I could see the defensive wall go up. "I'm fine, Jay. Just busy. It's a lot of work, you wouldn't understand," she snapped, the irritation evident in her voice. I recoiled, stung by her tone, but I pushed back the urge to defend myself. It was clear that probing deeper would only lead to conflict. With each passing day, I became more attuned to the nuances of her behavior. The late nights continued, and my suspicions grew. Emma's phone buzzed with messages late into the night, her fingers dancing across the screen while I pretended to be asleep beside her. I felt like an intruder in my own life, watching helplessly as the woman I adored slipped away from me, entangled in the web of something I couldn't quite grasp. There was a night, not too long after, when I found myself wandering the streets of our neighborhood, lost in thought. The sun had set, casting a warm glow over the palm trees. But my heart felt heavy with uncertainty. I replayed memories of our laughter, our shared dreams, and the life we had built together. Would those moments ever return? Or were they slipping through my fingers like sand? The questions haunted me. I knew something wasn't right, and the longer I ignored it, the deeper the chasm between us grew. As I walked, I resolved to confront my fears head-on. I couldn't let doubt fester in silence any longer. If something was truly wrong, I had to know. But what if I was right? What if my suspicions were valid? The thought left a bitter taste in my mouth. The storm was coming, and I could feel the winds shifting. It was only a matter of time before the skies would break open and reveal the truth lurking beneath the surface. Little did I know that the revelations waiting just around the corner would change everything. It was a balmy Friday evening when I first met Zach. The air was thick with excitement, the kind that LA parties are infamous for. A friend of ours, a producer with an uncanny knack for bringing together the city's elite, was hosting a soiree at his sprawling hillside mansion. I had been looking forward to the night, hoping it would offer a much-needed distraction from the gnawing doubts that had begun to creep into my mind regarding Emma. As we arrived, the pulsating rhythm of music vibrated through the air, mingling with the laughter and chatter of guests who seemed to float effortlessly from one conversation to the next. Emma, with her natural grace, was in her element, her smile bright and contagious. I watched as she flitted about, her excitement palpable, chatting animatedly with friends, a glimmer of passion igniting in her eyes. It wasn't long before we were introduced to Zach. He stood at the edge of the outdoor terrace, leaning casually against the railing, the city lights twinkling behind him like a million tiny stars. With tousled dark hair, an easy smile, and a confidence that seemed to radiate from him. He had an aura that was hard to ignore. I couldn't help but feel a pang of unease as Emma approached him, her demeanor shifting to one of rapt attention. "Jason, this is Zach," she said, her voice laced with excitement. "He's an amazing musician, and I've been dying to introduce you to him." "Hey, man, great to meet you." Zach extended his hand, his grip firm and assured. There was a glint in his eye, a flicker of something that made me instinctively wary. "I've heard a lot about you. Emma speaks highly of you." I forced a smile, masking the knot tightening in my stomach. "Yeah, she's pretty great. I've heard some of your music too. It's impressive," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. I watched closely as they exchanged banter, the ease with which they interacted sending prickles of jealousy coursing through me. Zach had this effortless charisma, the kind that drew people in like moths to a flame. His laughter rang out easily, and every word he spoke seemed carefully chosen yet entirely natural. I felt like I was standing on the sidelines, an observer in a scene I couldn't quite penetrate. Emma leaned in closer to hear him, her eyes sparkling with admiration. I couldn't help but feel like an outsider, a shadow lurking in the periphery of their dynamic. "You should come to my show next week," Zach suggested, his gaze lingering on Emma. "I'd love to have you both there. It's going to be a great night." "Absolutely. We'll be there," Emma replied enthusiastically, her excitement palpable. I managed to nod along, my heart sinking as I forced a smile. Deep down, I was torn between wanting to support her passions and feeling an overwhelming urge to protect what we had built together. As the night wore on, I tried to shake off the unease. After all, I wanted Emma to have a rich and fulfilling life, and music was a significant part of who she was. But every time I caught a glimpse of Zach, whether he was deep in conversation with Emma or laughing with another group of friends, that familiar knot tightened in my chest. I had never been the jealous type, but something about the way he commanded attention made me uneasy. Throughout the evening, I continued to watch them from a distance. I tried to engage with other guests, but my attention was pulled back to Zach and Emma more often than I liked. It felt like I was stuck in a game of emotional whack-a-mole, where the feelings of jealousy kept popping up just when I thought I had them contained. Emma and Zach shared jokes and stories, and I could see the way she lit up in his presence. I knew I shouldn't be surprised. She had always been drawn to creative souls, people with passion and fire. But the way Zach seemed to effortlessly captivate her attention was unsettling. I was struck by how easy it was for her to connect with him, how her laughter seemed to flow freely as she absorbed his every word. "Are you all right?" a friend of mine asked as he approached me, noticing my distraction. I hesitated, unsure of how to articulate what I was feeling. Yeah, just a bit tired, I lied, forcing a chuckle to mask the reality of my thoughts. This party is just a bit overwhelming, I guess. Emma seems to be having a great time, he noted, glancing over at the two of them. I nodded, forcing another smile, but the truth was that I wasn't sure if I was more jealous of Zach or worried about Emma's growing connection with him. At some point, Zach stepped away to grab a drink, leaving Emma momentarily alone. I seized the opportunity to walk over to her, hoping to regain some of the connection we had been losing lately. Hey, I said softly, reaching for her hand. You're having fun, huh? I am. Zach is incredible, Jason. You should hear him play. He's so talented, she gushed, her enthusiasm palpable. I felt my heart sink a little. Yeah, I can see that, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. But what about you? How have you been? I feel like we haven't had much time together lately. She turned her gaze back to where Zach had been standing moments earlier, her smile wavering for just a second. I know, I've just been busy with all the music stuff. But it's important to me, you know? I get it, but I miss you, I admitted, trying to keep the tension from my voice. We used to have so much fun together. I want to share those experiences with you, not just hear about them secondhand. Emma looked at me, her brow furrowed slightly, and for a brief moment, I saw the flicker of guilt in her eyes. I'm sorry, Jason. I didn't mean to make you feel left out. It's just, everything is coming together for me right now. I want you to be a part of it, but it's hard to balance everything. Just promise me we'll make time for us, too, I said, forcing myself to stay calm. She nodded, but the look in her eyes told me that something was shifting. Even in that moment, as I grasped her hand, I could sense that there was a new dynamic entering our lives, one I couldn't quite name yet, but which felt threatening nonetheless. As the night went on, I tried to push my feelings aside. But the more time I spent in Zach's orbit, the more intense my jealousy became. I couldn't shake the sense that I was losing her, and as I watched Emma sparkle in the glow of his presence, I felt like I was watching a part of my life slip away like sand slipping through my fingers. Little did I know that this was just the beginning of a tumultuous journey, one that would test everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and the fragile threads that hold relationships together. As the weeks rolled into months, the signs were becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Emma's late nights became a routine, one that left me feeling like a ghost haunting the remnants of our once vibrant life together. It was as if I was living in a half-remembered dream, one where everything felt out of focus. My heart sank every time she mentioned going to another rehearsal with Zach, her eyes lighting up in a way that left me feeling both envious and alone. Sorry, babe, I can't make dinner tonight. I have to meet Zach at the studio, she would say with a casual smile, and every time, it felt like a knife twisting deeper in my gut. I tried to be supportive, even feigning enthusiasm for her projects, but my stomach churned with discomfort. She was spending more time with him, and I was left sitting alone in our home, wondering if the connection we once shared was slipping through my fingers like sand. At first, I chalked it up to her creative process, convinced that her dedication was simply part of her passion. But as the weeks wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Emma had begun to pull away, her laughter less frequent and her gaze often distant. She would be physically present, but emotionally she seemed worlds away. I noticed subtle changes in her behavior. Emma, once so open and loving, became more guarded, her conversations with me peppered with vague responses and fleeting smiles. The intimacy we shared, the late-night chats, the shared dreams, even the silly inside jokes, seemed to vanish. I felt like I was grasping at smoke, trying to hold on to something that was no longer there. There were evenings when I'd attempt to initiate a conversation, only to have her reply with a distracted nod, her attention fixed on her phone, scrolling through messages with a furrowed brow. I would catch glimpses of her screen, seeing Zach's name pop up more frequently than I was comfortable with. Whenever I'd ask her about it, she'd brush me off with a vague excuse. It's just music stuff, Jason, you know how it is. The more she retreated, the more my heart sank. I wanted to shake her, to scream that I needed her to come back to me, to show her how much I missed her. But instead, I was left standing in the shadows, plagued by a growing sense of dread that this distance might be more than just a creative phase. Then there were the little things. The way she would flinch when I reached for her hand, how she would dodge my gaze when I asked about her day, and the way she often left the house with a smile but returned home with a weariness that shadowed her features. I began to wonder if I was losing her to someone else. Each time I voiced my concerns, she would offer a half-hearted reassurance, but her eyes would betray her. They held a flicker of guilt that I couldn't ignore. "Jason, it's just a rehearsal. I promise I'm not hiding anything," she would say, her voice strained. But the more she insisted, the less I believed her. I felt like I was fighting against an invisible wall, trying to break through to the woman I once knew. One afternoon, I found myself sitting in our living room, staring at the blank television screen when I overheard a conversation that would shatter the fragile facade I had been clinging to. Emma was in the kitchen, her voice barely above a whisper, and I couldn't help but lean in closer, straining to hear her words. "I know it's complicated, Zach, but I can't stop thinking about you," she said, her voice tinged with an intimacy that sent a chill down my spine. I felt my heart drop as I caught my breath, my mind racing with disbelief and betrayal. "What was happening?" she continued, unaware that I was listening. "I just don't know how to tell Jason. He deserves to know, but I don't want to hurt him, or lose you." My heart pounded in my chest as her words echoed in my ears. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. The rehearsals weren't just about music, they were about something far more personal, something that was entwining her heart with someone else's. At that moment, everything shifted. I felt as though the ground had been pulled out from under me, the world around me blurring as my mind raced to process the implications of her words. This wasn't just a fleeting crush, it was something deeper, something that threatened to unravel the very foundation of our life together. I couldn't breathe. I stood frozen, my heart racing as I struggled to grasp what I had just heard. The weight of her confession hung heavy in the air, suffocating me with doubt and despair. I felt like I had been cast adrift in a sea of uncertainty. Lost and alone, desperately searching for a lifeline. How had it come to this? I thought of all the moments we had shared, the dreams we had built together. The thought of losing Emma to someone like Zach was unbearable. I was gripped by a surge of anger and betrayal, but beneath that, a deep sense of sadness washed over me. I knew I had to confront her, to demand the truth, but the fear of what I might find paralyzed me. As I stood there, heart racing and mind racing faster, I realized that I needed proof. I had to know for certain what was happening between them. I felt like a detective in my own life, piecing together the clues that would either confirm my worst fears or allow me to breathe again. But as I contemplated my next move, I was haunted by the possibility that the woman I loved was slipping further away from me, deeper into a world that I could no longer reach. With the shadows of doubt looming larger than ever, I knew I had a choice to make. I could confront Emma directly, risking everything in the hopes of salvaging our relationship. Or I could dig deeper and unravel the threads of this tangled web she had woven with Zach. Either way, I was staring into the abyss of uncertainty, and I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever came next would change everything forever. The days that followed Emma's phone call were some of the most agonizing of my life. The reality of what I had overheard weighed heavily on me, a dark cloud that seemed to dim every joy and spark in my life. I was lost in a fog of betrayal and uncertainty, grappling with the growing realization that I needed to confront the situation head-on, but I didn't want to do it in a way that would leave everything in ruins. I needed a plan, a way to expose the truth without setting off a chain reaction that would devastate everything we had built together. After several sleepless nights, an idea began to take shape in my mind. What if I could create a situation where Emma and Zach would feel comfortable and safe, only for me to unveil the truth in a way that would leave no room for denial? I envisioned a private concert, a gathering in one of Los Angeles's most prestigious clubs, where I could stage an elaborate ruse. It would appear to be an act of support for Emma's passion for music, but in reality, it would serve as a stage for Zach's confessions, one that would expose the depth of his feelings for my wife. I reached out to a few contacts in the industry, quickly securing a small but exclusive venue known for its intimate atmosphere. I wanted the setting to be perfect, dim lights, elegant decor, and an air of exclusivity that would make it feel special. I arranged for Zach to perform, fully aware that this would be his opportunity to showcase his new material. The plan was falling into place, and with each detail I ironed out, I felt a sense of control that had been missing for far too long. I invited Emma and Zach under the guise of wanting to support her dreams. I thought it would be a nice way for us to spend time together, I told Emma, forcing a smile. "You've been so busy with rehearsals. And I want to be part of your journey." She lit up at the idea, clearly excited about the opportunity to see Zach perform in such an intimate setting. "Thank you, Jason. This means a lot to me," she replied, her eyes sparkling with gratitude. At that moment, I felt a pang of guilt, but I quickly buried it. This was for the greater good. I needed her to see the truth. As the date of the concert approached, I could hardly contain my anxiety. I had rehearsed what I would say, and how I would respond to her questions. But the reality was that I had no idea how this would all unfold. I wanted to be strong, but the uncertainty clawed at me. What if she denied everything? What if I misjudged the situation entirely? The weight of the unknown felt crushing. Finally, the day of the concert arrived, and as I stood in the venue, overseeing the final arrangements, a flurry of emotions coursed through me. I was determined to see this through, but as I looked around, I felt the gravity of what I was about to do. The lights dimmed, and the audience buzzed with anticipation. I spotted Emma and Zach making their way to their seats, Emma's face glowing with excitement. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation that lay ahead. When Zach took the stage, he was met with enthusiastic applause, his presence commanding the room. He stood at the mic, exuding confidence, and I could see Emma leaning forward in her seat, her eyes alight with admiration. As he began to strum the guitar, a hush fell over the crowd. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he said, his voice smooth and inviting. "This song is special to me. It's about someone who has inspired me in ways I can't even begin to describe. It's a tribute to the passion that ignites the soul." As the first chords of the song rang out, I felt my heart race. The melody was hauntingly beautiful, weaving through the air like a whispered secret. But as he began to sing, the reality of the lyrics struck me like a bolt of lightning. The song was undeniably about Emma. The way he sang about hidden desires and secret moments left no room for misinterpretation. Each word dripped with a longing that made my stomach churn. Lines about sneaking away, about passion igniting in the darkness, left me feeling exposed and raw. I clenched my fists, feeling the tension build in my chest. Caught in the shadows, we dance in the night. Lost in the whispers, holding on tight. I could see Emma swaying to the rhythm, her eyes closed, lost in the moment, and it drove the knife deeper into my heart. How could she not see what was happening? The lyrics painted a picture of a love affair hidden from the world, a relationship wrapped in secrecy and desire. I felt the heat of betrayal rising within me, mingling with a sense of helplessness. Every stolen glance, every breath we take. In a world of our own, we're lost in the ache. The audience was captivated, hanging on every word, but I was in a different reality, one filled with anger and hurt. The truth I had feared was becoming undeniable, unfolding right before my eyes in a way that made it impossible to deny any longer. I had brought them here, and now I was the one caught in this web of lies. As the song progressed, I felt the room spinning around me, my heart pounding in my ears. Each line struck me like a hammer, driving the realization deeper into my soul. The words were intimate and electric. My wife was the muse of this song, and there was no escaping the implications. I glanced over at Emma, her expression rapturous, and it ignited a fire within me. Finally, as the final notes hung in the air, Zach looked out into the crowd, and for a fleeting moment, his gaze locked onto mine. There was a challenge in his eyes, a dare to confront the truth, and in that moment, I knew what I had to do. I could no longer remain silent. I had to expose this deceit, no matter the cost. As the applause erupted around us, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what came next. I would no longer let the shadows dictate my life. It was time to confront Emma, to bring this secret into the light. I could feel my pulse quicken as I stepped forward, the weight of my decision pressing down on me. I had orchestrated this moment for a reason, and it was time to make my move. The truth would come out, and with it, the chance to reclaim what I had lost. As the applause from Zach's performance began to fade, an unexpected surge of adrenaline coursed through me. I could no longer bear to sit back and watch the unraveling of my life from the shadows. It was as if a dam had broken inside me, releasing a flood of emotions that had been pent up for far too long. I needed to take control of the narrative, reclaim my voice, and unveil the truth that had been hidden beneath layers of deception. With every step I took toward the stage, I felt the weight of the room's gaze upon me. The crowd's energy shifted, a mix of confusion and curiosity rippling through the audience. I could see Emma's face change, her expression shifting from joy to shock as she processed my sudden appearance. It was as if time had slowed down, and the world around me blurred into a haze. The only thing that mattered was the mic in front of me and the guitar slung over my shoulder. "Hey, everyone," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "I know this isn't part of the plan, but I felt compelled to share something with you tonight." The audience murmured, their attention shifting from Zach to me. I took a deep breath, willing my heart to calm as I tuned the guitar strings. The familiar motion grounding me in the moment. "I'm Jason, and I'm here to share a different kind of song. One that tells a story," I continued, scanning the crowd before my eyes landed on Emma. Her expression was a blend of confusion and concern, and it fueled my determination. "This song is about love, betrayal, and the complexities of relationships. It's about the truth that's been hidden behind closed doors." As I began to play, the first chords filled the room, a haunting melody that echoed my inner turmoil. I poured every ounce of pain, confusion, and heartbreak into the music, crafting a melody that was as much a part of me as the words I was about to sing. "Every late night you spent away. Those rehearsals, you said, were just for play. I watched you slip further out of sight, while your heart danced in the shadows of night." The lyrics spilled from my lips, and the audience fell silent, the gravity of my words hanging heavily in the air. I could see Emma's eyes widen, a mix of realization and fear washing over her face. I continued, each line a deliberate jab that laid bare the secrets she thought she had hidden so well. "I thought we had it all, the perfect life. But you whispered sweet nothings to another man, my wife. Behind the curtain, you laughed and you played. While I was left here, shattered and betrayed." The tension in the room crackled like static electricity. I could feel the energy shift as the crowd absorbed the weight of my revelations. I caught glimpses of shock, disbelief, and pity reflected in their faces. But nothing compared to the look on Emma's. Her hands trembled at her sides, her expression a mix of horror and guilt. "Did you think I wouldn't see the signs? The stolen glances, the secrets in your eyes? You thought you could hide, but love leaves its trace. And now I'm standing here, unmasking your face." With each verse, I could sense the emotions rising within the audience, shock mingled with pity for what was unfolding. It felt exhilarating and terrifying at once. I was confronting the pain that had festered in the dark. And I felt powerful for the first time in what felt like ages. "Zach wrote you songs, sweet melodies for your heart. But all the while, it was tearing us apart. In the shadows, you laughed while I played the fool. But tonight, I take back my voice, this is my rule." The chorus hit hard, a cathartic release that rang through the room, echoing my pain and anguish. I could see some members of the audience nodding along, understanding the depth of my sorrow. "Tell me, Emma, did you ever feel the weight? Or was it just a game, a twisted fate? You danced in the light, but your heart was with him. And now, my love, it's time for the truth to begin." As I strummed the final chords, the room remained eerily silent, as if everyone was holding their breath. I locked eyes with Emma, and in that moment, the world around us faded away. The tension was palpable, it felt as if the air had thickened, charged with the emotional stakes of the moment. I stepped back from the mic, allowing the silence to linger. The final notes echoing in the stillness. The weight of my song settled over the crowd, and the truth hung in the air like a bitter aftertaste. I could see the realization washing over Emma, the walls of her carefully constructed facade crumbling before my eyes. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the applause began to roll through the audience, a hesitant recognition of the raw honesty I had just laid bare. I turned away from the mic, heart pounding, feeling a mix of triumph and heartbreak. I had stepped into the light and had reclaimed my voice, but the battle was far from over. I took a deep breath, the taste of victory mingled with the sting of betrayal. I had exposed the truth, but now I had to face the fallout. Emma stood frozen at the edge of the stage, her expression a whirlwind of emotions, shock, remorse, anger, and perhaps a flicker of understanding. I had revealed our darkest secret to the world, and now we had to confront the consequences together. As the final notes of my song faded into the charged silence, an eerie stillness enveloped the room. The audience, once vibrant with energy, now sat frozen, grappling with the emotional turmoil that had just unfolded before them. All eyes were on Emma, whose face was a canvas of shock and disbelief. It was as if time had come to a standstill, and the weight of the moment pressed heavily on everyone present. Emma sat in her seat, her mouth slightly agape, struggling to process the depth of my revelations. I could see the tears welling in her eyes. A mixture of regret and fear that mirrored the turmoil I had felt for months. She seemed lost, as though she were trying to find her footing in a reality that had shifted beneath her. The words I had sung hung in the air like a noose, tightening around her as she wrestled with the implications of my performance. Zach, meanwhile, stood frozen with his guitar still in hand, unable to lift his gaze from the floor. The confidence he had exuded moments before had vanished, replaced by a palpable sense of guilt. He seemed smaller somehow, as if the weight of my song had physically compressed him, leaving him unable to confront the fallout. I could sense the embarrassment radiating from him, and the realization that he had been exposed alongside Emma, bound together in a moment of public humiliation. The audience, realizing they had witnessed something deeply personal and raw, began to murmur among themselves. The shockwaves of my revelations rippled through the crowd, creating an atmosphere thick with tension. Some guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats, while others exchanged glances, grappling with the realization that they had become unwilling participants in a private drama. They were witnesses to the unraveling of a marriage, a moment that would linger in their memories long after the evening ended. Feeling a sense of clarity wash over me, I took a final look at Emma and Zach, who remained ensnared in their web of confusion and shame. The silence was deafening, yet I felt a strange sense of relief. I had bared my soul and exposed the truth, and now it was their turn to confront the reality of what they had done. Turning away from the mic, I stepped back from the stage, my heart racing but resolute. I had made my final stand in this relationship, and it was time to walk away. As I exited the stage, the eyes of the audience remained fixed on the trio of us, Emma, Zach, and me, caught in a tangled web of love and betrayal. I felt a final surge of emotion, a blend of anger, sadness, and determination. I knew that this was the end of my journey with Emma. The love that had once brought us together had been overshadowed by lies and secrets, and there was no path forward from this moment. I had done everything I could to confront the truth, and now it was time for me to let go. Stepping into the dimly lit corridor behind the stage, I left the chaos behind, ready to embrace the uncertainty of what lay ahead. I was free, but it came at a steep price, a heavy heart and the realization that love, once so vibrant, had transformed into something unrecognizable.